All right, my time says 5:30 Central. So welcome everyone to our 6th installment in our Back to the Basics webinar series for the Tennessee Master Beef Program. Just some little housekeeping stuff, if I can get my screen to change. As you know, it's just me tonight. So whenever we're asking questions, if you can use the Q&A box, that would really help me out. But I'll also be moderating the chat box, so feel free to put anything in there that you need to. We will have some poll questions. Again, if they don't pop up on your end because of the browser that you're in, that's perfectly fine. These are just some interactive questions that we like to do along the way to keep engagement. And so I won't take any more time away from Dr. Schrick, who is our speaker tonight, talking about just some overview of the beef industry. Dr. Schrick is our very own department head in the UT Animal Science Department, as well as professor. So I'll turn it over to you, Doc.
Out here.
There you go. You're muted.
Okay. All right, can you see it, Courtney?
Yep, you're good.
That's good. Okay, so welcome everyone. This is hopefully going to be a fun and entertaining presentation today. I'm going to throw a lot out at you. Dr. Reinhardt told me that we had some newcomers to the Master Beef Program, so I'm going to have some information that some of you will be surprised and some of you will not be surprised about. I kind of call this my crystal ball, and I always tell people that my crystal ball is broken, that I could, in the old days when I was young and thought I was real smart, I could figure out which direction the beef cattle industry was going to go, but as I've gotten older and gray-headed and lost all my hair, I've kind of changed my tone on that. So one of the things that I like to do is I like to, when I'm visiting with a mixed audience like this, I always like to ask people about, you know, when someone says beef production, which we're hearing all on the media, methane, global warming, all this sort of stuff. But when you think beef production, what is that first image that pops into your head? You know, what comes to mind? And mine is always steaks. I mean, again, you say beef, I'm thinking good old steak. Some people will tell you cows. There'll be some environmentalists that talk about feedlots. Others will talk about grain pastures. But the other thing that beef production is, and my definition of sustainability, is family and tradition. That's beef production. And when I hear people say, is beef production sustainable, or is the industry sustainable? I sure hope it is. I hope my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids can be in the beef industry when they grow up. So my definition of sustainability differs for some because mine is sustainability of the industry so our family and tradition can continue, as well as making improvements. Now, when I think about beef production, the other thing I think about is the road or the boat or the highway or whatever it takes, how much beef is sourced across the United States and across the globe. You know, one of the things is, as our middle class, especially in the Asian markets, continues to increase, then that means they have more money in their pocket. And when they have more money in their pocket, they're going to demand a high quality, safe protein source. And so again, when you hear that the population is increasing to 50 billion or so, I'm going to show you on the slide here in a bit, you know, or 10 billion. I don't think the 10 billion is really relevant. I really think what's relevant is what percentage of that group is going to move into the middle class and the upper class where they're going to say, you know, I can have steak on Friday night. Let's go get steak. And so again, look at this map and look how the animals from Brazil and Argentina and South America, how they get shipped and how the cattle are just moving everywhere. The meat production just moving all over the globe. Now, the big question we've been asked, and this is by scientists, by government officials, by producers and everything else, is beef production sustainable? Well, if you look at that graph down there at the bottom, you'll see our cattle numbers kind of continue to decrease in terms of our numbers. But if you look at the amount of beef that we're producing nowadays, due to you using better genetics, due to you using better vet care and animal care, due to your selection on what you want your animals to do that fit your environment, you can see that we've produced a lot more pounds of beef with a lot fewer cattle. And that's nothing that I, as a scientist, have done or anything else. It means that y'all have listened to your agents, you've listened to specialists, you've even listened to Reinhardt, which is hard to believe, but you've listened and you've incorporated what we've talked about. But all we can do is talk. You're the ones that did the work. You're the ones who incorporated what we've talked about. And so when I see that change, I remind government officials all the time, if any industry has worked on climate change or sustainability, the beef industry should be your poster child, because we have been able to produce more beef, more meat on fewer animals, lowering our carbon footprint. So we're probably negative nowadays, yet it's not realized, and that's one of the things you're going to hear me talk about later on, some of my frustration when I talk about it in classes. Now, oftentimes we get compared to the poultry industry and the swine industry, and that's fine. But recognize that those are very integrated industries. You've got industry that's producing the pigs down the line, and you've got farmers that are producing them. The same with poultry. You have Tyson or Avogen that's making the birds, sending them out to the producers' houses, and those producers are raising those. Companies come pick them up. They provide the nutrition, the vet care, the whole 9 yards. So I don't see the beef industry as integrated. I see it as coordinated. And what I mean by coordinated is cow-calf producers are producing those calves that are then going to the feeders or the stalker guys that are then going to the feedlots that are then going into the packers that are then going into retail. So it's more of a coordinated effort instead of an integrated effort as you see in other industries. So do I believe it's sustainable? Yes. Or I've been out of the business a long time ago. Now, worldwide, this slide shows the amount of meat production across species since 2016. And you can see for the most part, they've been pretty flat all the way across, although consumption continues to rise. And so if you'll notice that there was a little dip in the pork down here, again, little change, probably more due to China than anything else in that time period, but it's starting to come back up. Poultry is going to continue to grow. In this state, it's going to grow and grow and grow. But most of our broiler houses are owned by farmers and producers who have beef cattle as well. You see beef production is still there. It's not gone down, even though everyone wants to tell you that everyone has become a vegan or vegetarian in the last 5 years. I don't think this shows it. Or the ones that haven't are eating a lot more meat, which may be the case in my world. And then at the very top, you can see sheep. So again, consumption's been pretty flat, or the amount that's been produced is pretty flat, but you can see there are some changes that are occurring in the different industries. So question 1, which country has the highest trade value share of beef exports worldwide? Courtney?
Yep, it's launched, so they should be able to see it. Dr. Schrick, real quick, I had a request to see if you could make your slides larger. I'm going to see. No, that didn't help, did it?
Let me see.
Do that on your side.
Yeah, I'm going to have to see here. I'm going to stop sharing for a second.
Okay. The poll question should stay up. So, yep. So y'all should still be able to answer it. Awesome. And if you didn't hear the question, it's which country has the highest trade value share of beef exports worldwide?
Okay, is that any better? Whoever mentioned increasing the slides, if you could respond to Courtney, is that any better?
Well, you're not on presenter mode yet, but it
Oh,
might be.
okay. What about now?
It's still the same. It's okay.
All right, I tried to increase it on my side. I went to 100 and still couldn't get it any larger.
Yeah. I'm going to share results with you now.
Close, but no cigar. All right, very good. All right, so we're going to get down to that here in a second. Let me see if I can move this forward. Okay, so just some general information. So each year, if you're not a member of NCBA, if you are a member of NCBA, you get this magazine. And so each year, NCBA releases a lot of information about size and everything. So this is the United States top 10. So on the left side for me over here, you see beef cows. And this is the number of beef cows according to their 2021 direction in which states. And so this is beef cows. These are cows that have calved. Okay. So you can see Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Nebraska, things of that sort. I'd like to see Tennessee move back into there. When I first came to Tennessee, we were like 8th, 7th or 8th. I think we've dropped to about 15th now. I'd like to move back up into that top 10 with the forages that we have. But you can again see this is a top 10, and that is beef cows that have calved. And then over here on the right, I have a figure showing cattle on feed. So this would be the feedlots and things that we're very familiar with. And you can see some of the change there, how Kansas jumps up to number 3, Nebraska jumps up to number 2. And so again, that kind of shows you more of the location of where the feedlots are and how they're thought of. A lot of people would have thought Oklahoma would have been in there, but our feedlots are located primarily up in the Panhandle, a little bit down in the Southwest. And so again, Texas would be number 1 in that. But I'm going to share some more information with you on that here in a bit. So internationally, this is beef production. This is the number, this is beef production metric tons that are produced, the percentage worldwide. Okay, and this is just the top 10. They go all the way down to Zimbabwe and everything else. I mean, there's a whole long list. But in terms of beef production, United States is the top, Brazil's number 2, then the European Union, China, India, Argentina, and you're saying, whoa, you're saying back up, Dr. Strick, you've got India on there. India doesn't have beef. Let me show you here in a second what I'm talking about there. Australia, Mexico, Pakistan, and Russia. And, I think you're going to see Russia continue to move up that list. I think Australia will move back up the list as they get over their 12 to 14 year drought that they've had. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But this is the numbers in terms of beef production. So what about trade? The question was about trade value. How much is exported? Okay. And so if you notice, and when you look at trade value, what's the amount of beef export and their value? Brazil comes out number 1. Okay. They are shipping a lot of beef out compared to the US, where we consume a good bit of it. And so do they in Brazil. But they've got 72 million cows, 232 million of beef, of cattle. And so again, they've got a lot more animals than we have. So Brazil has the biggest exports. That changed. If I'd have showed you this slide and it said 2018, in 2018, that would have been India. That is the change. All right, and I'll explain why here in a bit. Australia is number 2. And again, Australia is large in a big cattle industry, but also Australia has been up there for a while because of the drought. They've been having to get rid of cattle, move cattle out. And so again, that's why you see those numbers up there. But again, they're big. United States is 3rd. India is fourth. And again, you're probably shaking your head there saying, India, Hindu, they don't eat cows over there, things of that sort. I'll show you in a minute what we're talking about. And then you go on down the list, Argentina, the Netherlands, things of that sort. So recognize when we say beef exports, that can be dairy steer calves, that can be dairy cow meat when they're cold and slaughtered and things of that sort. So again, that consumes a lot in there. And if you look at total number of cattle in the United States is 30 or 93 million head. That's everything. Beef, dairy, calves in the feedlot, calves on the ground, the whole 9 yards. 93 million. Okay. You look at Brazil, and they're 232 million, I think, of today, cattle. So that's everything, dairy, beef, calves, on feed, things of that sort. Okay, so big numbers. Okay, there's India's beef industry, not on the right, but on the left, water buffalo. Due to the majority of citizens in India being Hindu and everything, then the slaughter of those Bos indicus, what you see on the right there, is not allowed. What they're slaughtering and what they're sending are water buffalo, which are not considered sacred. And most of that is going to China for fondue pots and stuff like that. So beef tripe, beef tongue, things of that sort. Tons of it going to China and everything. Now, why have they dropped? Why did I say in 2018 they were way up there, but in 2020 they're down? That was because they elected a new prime minister in 2016, a prime minister that did not want to see the slaughter of either water buffalo or cows. There was a lot of turmoil because most of the slaughtered plants and things were being owned by Muslims. And so again, there was a big breakup or disagreement with the new prime minister. If you watched the news back in 2016, 2017, you saw them, they were burning cattle trucks and they were burning cattle slaughter facilities and stuff like that. So I think that's why you've seen the drop. Now, do I think they'll come back up? No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be a change in government and things of that sort. And even then, I'm just not sure because of what China's starting to produce on their own, and China's beef also that they get from Australia. Okay. So another question that people ask is, okay, does the United States ship live cattle? And we do ship live cattle. Okay, not just embryos, not just semen, not just meat packaged up, but we do send live cattle. Now, a lot of them may be going to Canada, as you see up there on the top, to be harvested, okay, to be processed. The same with Mexico. But we're also sending a lot of genetics around to these companies, especially Vietnam, Pakistan. I've got a good friend of mine, I shouldn't call him former, but a good friend of mine, who's Secretary of Agriculture down there in Pakistan, equivalent, and they're loving getting cattle from us, bringing in the genetics. But when you look through there, that's where the cattle went. Now, there was some of a dip in 2020, probably due to COVID and things of that sort that's starting to rebound here. But again, if someone says, do they put cattle on a ship and actually haul them? Yes, they do. Sometimes they even fly them. And so again, we do export live cattle, and we're probably one of the biggest exporters of live cattle that there is. Okay. So what does beef production look like on a global thing and the particulars? And so several years ago, we had a group that came to us, and I taught Justin Reinhart and Jason Smith at the time to put together an educational slideshow for their producers, for their people, their tech, to learn about beef production in the different regions of the globe. This was a pharmaceutical company. They were hiring a bunch of business grads and economics grads and everything that really didn't grow up on a farm, didn't understand cattle and things of that sort. So the next several slides are from Justin and Jason. They did a great job putting this together, but it gets into the particulars so you can see how beef production varies across the globe. Okay, so we'll start with North America first, United States, Canada, Mexico. So again, as of right now, we still have access to a large supply of arable lands. Again, highly segmented, as we know, even in the state of Tennessee. If you look at the state of Tennessee, you got cattle in middle and central, you got row crops over to the west, things of that sort. So you've got, very, very difficult right now to become a vertically integrated industry. And people ask me all the time, are we going to become like the poultry industry and like the swine industry? And the beef producers I know, growing up in them and having a dad that's still around, I would say they're very, very independent souls, and I don't see that happening very soon. We do have relatively small land holdings per producer compared to, say, South America and others. Our herd size is pretty small. If you look at our herd size, they say the average in the United States is 43 head per herd. And so people are, oh, no, that can't be right. And I ask people, which state has the most ranches with 1,000 head or more? Oh, Texas, Montana, blah, blah, Florida. So again, we're relatively small acreage herd size. So again, Tennessee, when we use examples from Tennessee, we're not that far off from what everyone else would be. We do have intensive management, and I applaud the county agents and others who have participated to help improve those, and the producers that have incorporated those management practices into their farms. Again, we may have done the research, but you did the implication. You applied it. So kudos to you. We do have a well-developed transportation infrastructure, mostly British cattle, but recognized in the South, we do have the Zebu influence, predominantly feedlot finished. Again, we're going to some grass finished, but right now it's still predominantly grain finished. Strong demand for those choice products. And again, very much in the steaks, whereas you go to other countries, they're wanting the roast and things like that. We're wanting the steaks and things. And again, kind of as you've noticed the last couple of years, especially when Jennifer Houston was president at NCBA, the continuous battles to get into South Korea market, to get into the Japan market, to get into the China market, how difficult it is to get into that world export. Now, South America, country I've visited fairly often, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia. Again, large supply of arable land, large land holdings. I'm going to show y'all later an example of what I'm talking about there. Large herds, 3,000 head herds, pretty common down there. And so, when you talk about implementing a certain procedure like artificial insemination or something like that, it's kind of hard to economically justify that when you got 25 head of cattle. But when you've got 3,000 head of cattle, they implement it much faster than we do. Again, it's starting to change. It is a segmented production, but you're seeing a lot of change, especially in Brazil, which I'll show you later. A lot of feedlots coming about. Used to be a grass finished market. Now more and more feedlot coming in because of the grains and things down there. And so it's a little bit more of a change. And with that feedlot feeding, where Brazil and Argentina used to both be 4.5 years of age before you would take the animal to be slaughtered, nowadays they're down about the same as we are. They're down into the 23 to 28 month range and going lower, similar to us. So again, age at harvesting is decreasing big time. Predominantly Zebu, but you're going to see they're bringing some British in there, mostly Angus and Hereford. Less developed transportation, but the one thing about transportation I will tell you about Argentina and Brazil and Colombia both, you will be checked by the equivalent of their highway patrol all the time. Every time when you're traveling down there, you don't see the police pulling over a speeder. What you see is the police pulling over a trailer full of cattle or a truckload of cattle, checking their papers. In Argentina, it is so severe, you've got to have papers to move from one county to the next county. And even if you have a ranch in County X and you got a ranch in County Y, you've got to have papers signed by a veterinarian that states what those animals are. And those cops are going to get up there, those highway patrolmen are going to get up there and they're going to check those tags, check that paper. And it is unbelievable the time they spend on checking those things. So again, their global market continues to grow. Great ID system for determining cattle. They have a big organic market, especially Argentina has a huge organic market to the European Union and things of that sort. So oftentimes you'll go down there and you'll see yellow tags and blue calves or blue tags. So yellow tags are those animals that are conventionally raised, implanted, antibiotics, things of that sort. Whereas the blue tags are the calves that are going over to the European market, no implants, no growth implants, no antibiotics added or anything like that. So again, completely different change. And the interesting thing is down here at the bottom, you have Argentina, huge state. But if you go right across the center of Argentina right there, you would think that you were living in West Tennessee. Yeah, fescue. They have fescue down there just like we have. Hate it just like most of y'all may hate it. I think it's a good grass, others don't. But again, if you go down there in the central region of Argentina, it's just like Tennessee right here, West Tennessee. If you go up in the northern Argentina, then you're going to see a lot of zebu cattle, more like South Texas and things of that sort. And if you go down here to the more northern part of Argentina, or the southern part towards Antarctica and everything, you're going to see a lot of sheep, and it's going to look a lot like Minnesota and type of cattle, calving inside and all that sort of stuff. Okay, European Union, completely different, very small herds, limited access to arable land, everything's really tight. They have a very high population density relative to farmland compared to what we're used to here. Very much influenced by consumer preference. Oh my goodness. They are really, really strong in that. And when the consumers say, I want X, you go X. Because if you don't go X, you're not going to be in business very long. Primarily forage finished, mostly British Continental and dual purpose. A large percentage of the beef originates from their dairy herds over there. So again, a lot from that production side of things. Probably more veal production. Closest to us would probably be Idaho and California for veal. Small profit margins. They very much depend upon government subsidies. Very, very much depend upon government subsidies over there. Humongous animal traceability. Very, very intensive animal traceability. And they've really went away from vet procedures such as castrating or dehorning or branding or anything like that. So kind of went away from that because of the animal welfare that was being brought on by their consumers. And their consumers were like, we don't want the animal to have felt pain or anything. And so that's what the grocery store said, okay, we'll bring you in beef that's done that way. Africa, again, very variable. Again, if you went to South Africa and the very tip down here, again, production not too different than what you're going to see in some areas in the United States. But in other parts, especially eastern over here, and then over here in the western side of Africa, very, very sparse. Nomadic type cattle that are moving from here to there and things of that sort. very few fences and things. So varying climate, limited forages and water availability, extended droughts for a considerable amount of time. They do have major issues with disease and parasites. We have a faculty member in the department that's from Ethiopia, and what he can tell you there, what goes on in terms of disease and parasites is not good at all. Primarily, again, zebu or zebu influenced cattle. It is segmented, that you'll see some vertical integration of the beef industry. So you will have some companies that own the cattle and move them down through the pipeline, similar to what you see in poultry and in swine. Not to a great deal, but it's there, much more than here in the United States. They do not practice traditional feeding, so very few feedlots, very few forage until you get further down into South Africa and things of that sort. Again, as I mentioned, South Africa is well developed, modern beef cattle production, a lot of artificial insemination, embryo transfer and stuff like that, similar to us. But the other parts of the country is just very volatile, and drought and market. Again, it's got a ways till it's anywhere near what you see in the United States, South America, or anywhere else. Probably the fastest growing area is Asian. Again, high population densities, but there are areas of cattle, you know, in China, in Russia. It would surprise you that you go to an area and bam, there's this cattle. And it's more towards the central part of China, not out toward the coast. And so again, water resources, there's some exceptions like I said, the pork production, especially in China, has really taken off, as well as poultry, but pork big time, a lot of growth in that area. Some vertical integration occurring, especially in Russia. I wish Justin was on. It could talk about some of the work he's done out there with a producer in Russia and the size of the feedlots and things like that. Again, mostly American genetics. Large differences in climate. And so again, you've got a big mixture of Zebu, Indicus, British, Continental, you name it, big range, primarily forage. Most regions in Asia do not finish their cattle like what we think of finishing cattle, and they're much older to harvest, usually 4 to 5 years in that range. There is some growth, like I said, in Indonesia and Russia, especially Russia, on some feedlot. And again, if you get an opportunity to talk to Justin Reinhardt about that, he'd be a good one to share some of his knowledge of those folks up there. So again, the one thing that we see with this market that we've not seen with the other markets is this: their middle class is growing. Their middle class is growing. And when they're growing, they're making more income. And as they make more income, they want to pay it spend that money on high quality protein. And that's where the beef comes right into it. So again, this is where you're seeing growth in demand because of the growth of the middle class. Okay. And so you're going to see later on, I talk about population growth and things. We'll take population growth, but also think about middle class growth in there. So again, the very, very last line on there, and this is very true. This is a coveted market. I mean, everyone wants to get in this market, including the United States, which Jennifer Houston worked a lot to get done. South Korea, Japan, China, and things of that sort. It's a high demand market right now. And then the oceanic, talking about Australia and New Zealand. And like I said, New Zealand is primarily dairy. You'll find very few, of any, beef cattle in New Zealand. Their beef is from dairy. Okay, so it's the cull animals, the male dairy calves and stuff like that. That's what's producing the beef that year coming out of New Zealand. Okay, whereas Australia has had that major drought the last 12 to 14 years. You've seen the fires this past year over there. So a wide range of climates. You go to the South Island of New Zealand and it's very, very cold. You go to the north part of New Zealand, it's mostly dairy. But in Australia, again, very vast land holdings, large. You'll show a picture here in a minute where they're getting them up by helicopter, and that happens. They do get them up by helicopter and things of that sort. So large areas, very, very dependent upon export market. If you think about the population of Australia, it's along the coast. It's a growing population along the coast, but again, with the number of cattle they have, they've got to get those moved out. And so you'll see one in a minute where I've got a big ship leaving Australia. That's because they're exporting. Primarily finished on forages. Again, very divided. If you go up to the northern part versus the southern, in terms of the type of cattle you'll see, a lot of Zebu or Bos Indicus, but you'll also see some Bos Taurus out there, some Santa Gertrudis, some Beefmaster, things of that sort. So it's a big mixture, but a lot of Bos Indicus because of the heat and things of that sort. So very much, you could take Australian divided into 4 quarters, and it's different on beef production in those 4 quarters. So again, New Zealand, primary dairy, mostly dairy, but the dairy is what's producing their beef. Australia, again, wide open, large land, massive properties. So to talk a little bit more about South America. So it's the area that I'm most familiar with, making trips down there as a faculty member up here at UT. Most of my trips were to Argentina, but also into Brazil. And what you see there, that picture of the combines, that is Brazil. And you'll see the same thing in Argentina. You know, love or hate Monsanto, whichever one, but down in Brazil, Monsanto is king. And they have really, really flourished the soybeans and corn and everything from the Roundup Ready type things. And so that's one of their huge markets. And so that picture there is very true. But they've also become very technical. Again, no-till, which we've been doing here for years, but they very much incorporated no-till into their grazing, bringing in Hereford genetics and Angus genetics and others. Again, this is a picture, the third picture here, and I'm sorry if it's too small to see, is a huge feedlot. Everyone used to think everything was grass finished out there, but they went through the feedlot systems, especially with the genetics they're putting in there, but also because of the grain, soybean and corn and things that are being produced in maize and everything else that's being produced down there nowadays. Mostly because, like I said before, Monsanto and their Roundup Ready type products. Again, you see the electronic tags. I wanted to show those electronic tags because, again, you go down to Brazil or Argentina, you'll see almost every animal has one of them. And that's what they're using to move them from one county to the next, but it also, there's different color tags for the different end market they're going to go to. So really jumped on the radio frequency tracing and things of that sort. They did it primarily not for marketing, but they did it because they were having issues with disease outbreak, such as foot and mouth and others. And this allowed them to trace their health issues a lot faster. Now they've gotten into the market side where they can go to Europe and others and say, hey, look what we do. The United States doesn't do it. We do it. You ought to buy cattle from us. So they become very, very efficient. Now, I wanted to give you a comparison between the two. And again, these would be numbers that I got today that I tried to put together that are still right on the money. 31 million head of beef cows in the United States, 72 million in Brazil. So big difference. Those are beef cows, not on feed and things like that. This is beef cows at home. Average herd size is said to be around 60 in the United States. The average herd size in Brazil, 3,000. Tennessee's average is about 30, anywhere from, I've heard 18 to 36. So pick a number in between there. Most people say 26. So we're very much smaller than what Brazil is. Again, AI is probably about 10% of the herds or so in the United States use some sort of AI. In Brazil, that number is increasing fast, using a lot of sex semen and others. I have 9 to 12%. I would say by 2030 that they could be up close to 30, 40% that are doing some sort of AI at least once. So again, they're moving in that area, and that's because of their adaptation. You've heard Justin Reinhart preach over and over and over about ester synchronization. In the United States, we've been slow to adapt that on commercial herds and things of that sort. Whereas over there, because the herds are so large and everything, that's adaptation of ester synchronization protocols and AI has been much quicker than what ours is. And again, I think that relates to the size of the herds. It's a lot easier to adapt something quickly to when you've got 100 to 200 to 600 head of cows that you're going to do in a day compared to our smaller size herds. Again, pregnancy checking with the ultrasound, that's what that means at the bottom, is starting to be accepted in the United States. If you've been to one of the ultrasound schools up at the Middle Tennessee Research and Education Center, again, you can see it's out there. But over in Brazil, again, because they have high numbers and it makes it affordable when you have high numbers, they're using a lot more of the ultrasonography for their pregnancy checking. And again, that makes sense. It's kind of hard to justify buying a $5,000 ultrasound when you got 25 cows, okay? But when you're over there and you got 3,000 head of cows, and it makes it a lot quicker. And so again, the herd size and the income as well. So in 2004, this is a picture of the Nelores, their most common breed in Brazil. White Brahma type cattle. Recognize they do have fire ants just like we do. I don't know if any of you can see that fire ant mound out there, but they do have fire ants. But research led by faculty, mostly at Missouri, University of Missouri, started using Angus on those zebus, okay? And changing and making F1s. So half Nelore, half Angus. And really changing the market, especially now since they have feedlots and all that sort of thing, that the crops and stuff, instead of that grass or forage finishing system, they're moving towards a grain finishing. Not all, but they're moving that direction. And they're bringing in the Angus genetics. And so there's an example. You show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and those cows out there are ready to be time bred. So they're using ester synchronization that will allow for timed ovulation. So you can time inseminate those animals. And you got to the end of the day to get all those bred. Okay? Much larger than a 25 cow herd or even a 100 cow herd here. But that's what you would wake up to. And so again, a large number of cattle. And when I look at those cattle, I'm going, my goodness, how are you getting anything with that low of body condition pregnant? I don't know how many of you noticed the body condition on those animals, but again, those animals have adapted to their environment. They've adapted to the forages that are available to them, and they do very, very well, okay? So they're taking these and they're putting Angus on them. So there's just some pictures of F1 using that Angus semen, mostly, again, almost totally all US genetics. Using some growth Angus bulls, but also using a lot of more what I call sustainable OCC discovery type Angus bulls, a little bit smaller in frame and things of that sort. But again, when this first started, the folks down there thought this was nuts. And so you can see the mixture out there of the Nelores and the Angus. And let me just show you that picture. That's where you're going. And you're wondering why Brazil's beef are just booming. Why the amount that they're able to export of beef, of meat and everything is growing widely. You just took those Nelores and you've been crossbreeding them, and that's what you're getting now. And just meat wagons. And so again, that's why they're going to be pushing us hard. And again, I believe we have a higher quality product than they do. But again, and just tons of meat produced, they've got a lot more cattle than we do. And they're getting the system set up where they're fit pretty well. Okay. I mentioned Australia, and I mentioned the ship with the carriers. So you know, this is what I'm talking about. This is the Australian market. They don't have the large population of human beings that are eating a ton of meat, although they eat a lot of meat. They've got to ship it. And most of those ships from Australia are heading right to China. Okay. And so again, we call it mining boom to dining boom. I mean, they have really transitioned well. Now the drought has impacted them a lot, major impact of the drought, but they'll recover. They'll come back. And again, a more forage base, very few feedlots over there, and very much forage finished. So I mentioned the helicopters, and here's some pictures to show you of the helicopters getting the cattle up and everything like that. So a little bit different production in Australia than Tennessee. So again, it's a different. And no, I would not go up with those guys when they're in their helicopters. No way in the world would I fly with them, because they're dangerous. That's all I'm going to say. All right. So again, you see a lot of Bos indicus over there in certain regions. Courtney, do you want to ask me a few questions here before I get into this next part? Because we're going to go a different pathway here.
Yeah. So we have a couple that would be good to ask at this point. Someone was just wondering your opinion on Walmart's new Angus beef brand, if you have an opinion on that.
Okay. So of course I've got an opinion. You probably don't want to hear it, but I've got an opinion. Remember, it's not only beef, but also dairy. So Walmart has also put a dairy up in the Indiana, Illinois area, big, huge dairy that shut down a lot of the supply that our dairy producers here were going. Now, in terms of Walmart and their Angus operation are setting up here, they were just trying to decrease transportation. They're still going to be in the market. They're still going to be in the market for Angus type cattle, or black, I should just say black hided cattle, what I should say. They're still going to be in the market. But when they looked at logistics of cattle, you know, just imagine, I don't know how many of you have been up 65 and seen that humongous Tyson plant or IBP plant on 65 north of Nashville. But here we are in Tennessee. We have a cow-calf operation. We've got some stocker guys, but we send our cattle mostly up north or west to the feedlots. And then if they go into an IBP plant and they get put on a truck and hauled back down to Goodlettsville to be cut up into boxes to be shipped to the restaurants. Walmart just said, hey, let's find another central area where we can supply our Walmarts and everything. And so again, I think it's, as long as you're producing quality product, they're going to go after it. Now, here's the thing with Walmart, and you're going to hear me talk about them in this next segment too. So the Walmarts of the world, the McDonald's of the world, and everything are very much consumer. They have to give the consumers what they want. Similar to the European Union, when you heard me talk about the European Union and some of the changes that they've made because of consumer preference. Okay, you're going to start seeing some of that same here. And it's already out there. There's some already out there. This is not new, but I think you'll see it become more and more what I call vertically coordinated, not vertically integrated, but vertically coordinated, and Walmart being one of those that we're targeting. Okay, Courtney, next question.
Okay, so next week we have reproduction, and we'll talk a lot more about artificial insemination and stuff like that. But I was curious what you think the major limitation for adoption here in the US is, or specifically Tennessee.
Basically herd size. I mean, two different things. Okay, one, 80 to 90% of our producers in Tennessee do it as a second income. They have cattle for a second income. It's not their major. So about 80 or 90% of the operations do that. They have beef cattle because grandpa had beef cattle and great grandpa had beef cattle, and they have the farmland, and they're a cheaper bush than a bush hog going out there, bush hogging it to have cattle and things like that. It's not their primary income. Okay. Whereas down in Brazil, these ranches, that's their income, that and grains. Okay, so again, some of it is just due to herd size, and some of it is due to, what is your primary? If you look at most of our purebred producers, they are using AI, and they need to because they're selling genetics, and so they're using AI. You'll see the change as you go west, as you go further west in the Oklahoma, Texas, Montana, and things like that. You start seeing the commercial herds, South Dakota and things that have incorporated AI into those. But again, we're talking bigger herds. We're talking larger number of animals and things like that. So when they're looking at the economics of it, they can make it what they feel like pay. I think next week, Justin will show them AI will pay from the genetics that you're going to produce. And so again, the difference is in Tennessee, larger, small herd, or smaller cattle herds, and not the primary income of producers here. And again, now with these timed insemination protocols that have just gotten better and better and better. I mean, when I came here in '94, we had one of the first timed insemination protocols that there was, and we were hitting 50% on our cows. Now we better be 60 or above on our cows. And so again, the system has gotten better. And so I think as people see it, they'll start incorporating it more. Now, another reason you don't see AI as much as other states is in other states, you can throw a stick and you're going to hit a person who can do AI. There's an AI technician everywhere. You go up to Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, where everyone used to own a dairy. They were all doing AI and dairy long before beef at a higher rate. And as they've gotten out of the beef or out of the dairy industry, they've moved into beef, but they're also going around breeding other people's cows. I saw it when I was up north. The availability of AI technicians was much greater. But with these time protocols now, you can basically set these animals up on a Monday, Wednesday schedule, or a Thursday, Saturday. I need the technician out there to breed cows, and I'm off work Thursday so I can be there. So again, as we've gotten better protocols, I think you'll start seeing the incorporation of it. But here's my one last thing I'll say about artificial insemination. If you're going to start using artificial insemination, that means you're going to be bringing better genetics to your farm. You better have the groceries to feed those better genetics, or you just have a calf. Okay, might as well just go out there and buy you $1,000 bull. So if you're going to bring better genetics in, get with Dr. Bates, get with Dr. Mason, look at your forages, make sure you've got the groceries, because we don't want to go pay a high feed bill. And so do you have the forages, the groceries and everything for those better genetics? And so with AI, that's something else to keep in mind. All right.
I'm going to ask you one more that just came in because I think it's a good one for right now where we're at. But what are your thoughts on beef on dairy and how that'll affect the cow-calf industry?
Massive. I knew it was growing. I did not know how fast it was growing till this summer. And if you go out to the Texas Panhandle and you see a lot of those dairies that were in California and everything have moved down into Texas and things like that. They're moving out of California, moving to Texas and New Mexico and all those. And it's become a big increase. You know, again, I don't think we can produce the amount of beef that we could use with today's politics. That could change tomorrow. But in terms of today, we still have a market for beef. If we'll get out there and actually get it promoted and things of that sort, I think there's still a market. Will it have an impact? The beef on dairy? I'm telling you, I never thought I would see the growth in it like I've seen. And again, I think it's a change from those folks moving from California, moving in to Texas and things that sort, New Mexico. You've even got it in this state. We've even got dairies in this state that are using it some. So again, yeah, it's coming. Will majorly impact beef production. Let's keep having everyone eat beef, and it won't be a problem. Let's get that consumption up to a lot more. All right, I'm going to continue on. So several years ago, they started a group called the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And this group, again, is not new, but in 2011, so 10 years ago, I brought this up to the animal science department heads at our annual department head meeting that we have with all the department heads from animal science departments across the United States. And I asked them, I said, how many have heard of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef? Zero, none. And so I gave a little presentation on that saying, okay, this is coming, guys. We're going to be, you know, this is going to get a lot more input. So who makes up, what is this Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef? Well, you've got three major groups, and it's the Canadian Roundtable, Brazilian Roundtable, and the US Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. And recognize Dr. Bates is our representative at the US Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. When he and I went to their first meeting, there were 4 universities at that meeting. Dr. Bates was the only person who was an extension person there. And so it was basically Arkansas, Nebraska, and Iowa State and Tennessee. And we were there, and it was the most interesting conference. We can talk more about it at the very end, but it was really eye-opening to me because you had all segments of the industry there. So you have this group. So within the US Roundtable and the Global Roundtable, you have retail members, McDonald's, Burger King's part of it now as well, Hardee's, A&W, things of that sort. So you have retail members. You've got commerce and industry members. Okay, Tyson, JBS, Zoetis, Elanco, Allflex, Cargill, Merck. They're all part of this. Okay, they have representatives at the table sitting right next to us. Okay, so they're there as well. There's your two biggies, JBS and Zoetis. Okay, you have producer members. So NCBA has a group that is represented there. Certified Angus Beef, the Council for Cattle Council of Australia. These are all there at the Global Roundtable. And then within the US Roundtable, you have the US component of that. So again, sitting right there at the table, right with us. You have Cargill, you have IBP, you have all those sitting right with us. You also have the civil society members. So when I was at the meeting in Atlanta, one of the first ones, I sat right next door to a person from the World Wildlife Federation. And also there was an HSUS there. And so again, now these guys here that I'm showing you are kind of the small fry. There's a new one out. And if you've not heard of them, and I apologize for not getting them in there, but it's called the Good Food Institute. I know people in this group worry about PETA and they worry about HSUS and their negative aspect on livestock. They do not compare to the Good Food Institute. Good Food Institute is funded by Bill Gates and others. And it actually is going to become the powerhouse that we deal with. The Good Food Institute is one that's very much supporting the lab-based meats and go in that direction, if you want to call it meats, if it's lab-based. Most of that is coming from the Good Food Institute. And so again, that's a group, if you've not heard of them, look them up. They're kind of hard to find, but you can do a Wikipedia and then just keep branching and branching and branching out. You'll see who are all members of this Good Food Institute, otherwise known as GFI. So the Global Roundtable for Sustainability of Beef, their focus really was being pushed from the retail side, especially Walmart in that group was really pushing, saying, okay, what is sustainable beef? What's it look like? And the reason for this is in 2014 or so, McDonald's had said that by 2016, all their beef would come from sustainable beef farms. And so they wanted the Global Roundtable and the US Roundtable to come up with a footprint. What does a sustainable beef farm look like? Well, I'll tell you what a sustainable beef farm looks like. Get in your truck and drive around Tennessee. That's sustainable beef. Because I'm going to show you here in a minute their definition and how it fits in to our group. So they had some core principles that they wanted it to look at. That, you know, this number 1 through 5 is not a ranking. It's just 1 through 5, but sustainability in terms of our natural resources. They were really fighting against the destruction of the rainforest, primarily in this here. So again, natural resources, people in the community. That not only was this economical to the producer who was busting their tail to produce beef cattle and everything, but also for the community that was involved in this. The towns that are built around, the national slaughterhouses and IBP and the big feedlots, that this was good for people, all the way to the farmer, all the way up to the community. Okay, sustainability in terms of animal health and well-being. And this is what they didn't get, you'll hear me say it in a minute, they wanted more to this, but they didn't get it from this group. Quality food, safe food, sustainable food. Okay, which again, I don't know if Dr. Bates has ever told his story about his patent, but if you've not heard the story from Dr. Bates on the patent, Courtney, remind me to tell it at the very end, and I'll give the story about his patent. And then the last one was efficiency and innovation. Guess what? You're sitting in a master beef producer meeting. You've listened to your county agents. You've went to Tennessee Cattlemen's meetings. You went to county livestock meetings. You've heard specialists and agents and everything get up and talk about this and that to improve efficiency, better genetics, better health care, you know, the vet care for animals and stuff like that. And y'all have done it. So that's why we become efficient. So again, when you look at these are their core principles, which to me, we really, really take care of. Okay. So their little pyramid that they had was that sustainable beef is socially responsible, economically viable, and environmentally sound. Okay, so that was their classic definition. Okay, and still is. That's their founding that they're still working on. This group's still active too. So this is how they defined it, sustainable beef, which really caused McDonald's to get really upset with them. But they defined sustainable beef as socially responsible, environmentally sound, and economically viable product that puts a priority on the planet, people, animals, and progress. And this came out in September 2014, and it's still the only definition they have today. Okay. McDonald's wanted it to come in and say that no antibiotics, no growth implants, and all this sort of stuff. And this group was made up of producers, agents, specialists, the whole 9 yards. And so again, it was a big group that put this together, but you had scientists and producers and everyone there. And so again, science came about, and science is what came up to this discussion. So once it moved from the global roundtable, then it went down to the US roundtable, Canadian roundtable, the Brazil roundtable. It stepped down to next, where Dr. Bates is a member of. Okay, so again, where we're at right now is the US roundtable is working on some educational trainings, which this is one of them. Okay, this is one of them. And so when the US roundtable met, one of their first priorities that they put was water. Okay, water for cow-calf, water for stocker, water for the feedlot, water for the crops that are feeding the animals in the feedlots, or the water that's growing the grass, water in the packer industry, cleaning that equipment, cleaning the carcasses, that water. And then the water by the retail. You know, you go into any grocery store and you go over there by the lettuce and everything, and they're spraying water. Well, they're also spraying water back there when they're cleaning up after they package the meats and things of that sort. They're not washing the meat, they're just packing them, washing the area that they package them. So water became the number1 angle. And so the group sat down, which Dr. Bates and I were part of the cow-calf group that was led by a rancher in California. And part of the discussion was 6 things for cow-calf producers. There were 6 things that cow-calf producers needed education on, per se, to be sustainable. And when we heard them, Gary and I looked at each other and we said, well, Tennessee's done. We're taken care of because we're already doing that in master beef. And so the 6 things was, one of them was, do you do rotational grazing? Or do you have a grazing management plan? And yeah, most of us have a grazing management plan. It may not be rotational. It may be we open this gate and leave the cows in over here, and then we close that gate, things of that sort. But we do have a plan, all of us do, of some sort in terms of grazing. So one of it was, do we have a management plan for grazing? Are we using advanced technology such as reproduction, AI, artificial insemination, advanced technology in terms of distiller grain, so nutrition and things of that sort. So that was another one that, again, for years, if you've been attending any master beef talks or county agent meetings, things of that sort, you've heard us talk about those sort of things. Dr. Bates has been talking about it for 28 years. So again, if you think about the training that you've already done, you've already had it. Now, the one training that we need to bring in, and we're doing it, but we need some more. And I know that Justin has gotten it covered by Andrew and others in terms of land transition. Okay, if we're going to be sustainable in the beef industry, we've got to have a plan for transitioning this land so it stays in beef production and not become in Sevier County with mobile or subdivisions. Okay, is there a plan? Do you have a plan to transition your land so it stays in beef? Because again, the definition for sustainability of beef also means it stays around for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. Okay, so do we have a transition plan? And I know that Dr. Reinhardt, I believe, has had Dr. Andrew Griffith talk about that, but that's one of the things that I think in the last year or so we've talked more about than we did earlier on. So again, when we sat there and we listened to them and we heard what they were saying in terms of here's the education we needed, then Dr. Bates, he told them straight out front, then y'all need to be coming and buying all your cattle from Tennessee because we have already educated our producers in all those things. Okay, the only one we were lacking on at that time was the land transition, keeping it in the beef instead of into a subdivision or a factory or whatever. So again, I think the global roundtable and the U.S. roundtable are some guiding posts, but recognize they're very much influenced from the consumer side. The first meeting I went to, I sat on the back with Dr. Bates and Dr. Kaiser and the World Wildlife Federation and HSUS, and then there were cattlemen and everything, and it was interesting because as you got closer to the front, there was no assigned seating, but as you got closer to the front, you got to the Walmart, the McDonald's, the Hardee's, the Wendy's, and they were all millennials, all young, very young, and all very, very loud. And so when a beef producer would say XYZ, they would jump up and down and say XYZ can't occur. And we showed them it can occur. Because again, show me an industry that's had a decrease in cattle numbers, or a decrease in numbers of factories and everything, yet our production went up. And so again, we've been very efficient and very sustainable. I'll get off my horse now. Okay, so another area that I've been giving a lot of presentations across the US on is myths, falsehood, and truths. So first thing I want to say is do not get angry at me for what I'm getting ready to say. I'm just telling you what I can find. This is out of the scientific literature. This is on social media. This is everywhere. Okay. And so what I'm trying to make a point is we're beef producers. Let's market beef. I don't care if it's grass fed, if it's grain finished, if it's grass finished. I don't care. Let's promote beef. Let's promote the safety of beef, the quality of beef, the energy, the protein that it meets, that our bodies need. Let's promote beef. Okay, so this is a talk that I went around, and let me tell you, in today's college students, some of this just blows their mind. And so again, this is one that I've given a good number of times, but I think it fit well when Justin called me. This is what Justin wanted me to kind of go over. Okay. So first off, probably in this group, most of us know who Henry Kissinger is. If I ask a college student who Henry Kissinger is, they have no clue. Okay. But basically, Henry had this quote years and years ago that I think is very fitting for the times right now, where we're at. And this was actually said in 1972, I believe. Who controls the food supply controls the people. So to me, beef production isn't just about food supply or food security. Beef production is about national security. You want to make an army surrender, take away their food, make them hungry. You want people to surrender, take away their food, they'll surrender. So again, when we talk about beef production and agriculture, we're not only talking about food security, but we're also talking about national security, in my opinion. And then the rest of you can read the rest of the quote. Who controls the energy can control the whole continent. Who controls the money can control the world. Sounds like he just said it, didn't he? Just a week ago. This would make the news nowadays. But again, this was said years and years ago, and I still say very fitting. And I have to remind our undergrad students of this all the time. You know, that this is very, very true. Okay. John Salazar also had this quote. I've always said there's only one thing that can bring our nation down, our dependence on foreign countries for food and energy. And again, everyone in this room today would agree with that statement. Again, you want people to surrender, take away the food, shut down our dependence upon our own agriculture. So we need to keep that in mind. This is part of that land transition as well. So as we know, the world population, according to the US Census and everyone else, is supposed to get to 9 to 10 billion people by 2050. I don't know in changing times if it will or not, but we do all understand that our population is increasing. And as our population is increasing, hopefully that middle class is moving with it, is increasing with it. And with that middle class comes more funds to be able to spend on things such as beef and things of that sort. So again, it's an issue. But the other issue is this, and I apologize if the picture is not big enough to see, but I like showing this picture to the students, and you see all the nice farms here. Really nice, scenic. But I want you to look up in the very top, along the right corner there, the encroachment of urban. And that's happening here. I live in Sevier County. What used to all be beef farms and you saw beef cattle is now subdivision after subdivision after subdivision. And you're seeing it everywhere. If you've been around Spring Hill has boomed. Again, just this is what we're dealing with. So we've got less land, we've got less water, yet we have to feed a growing population. And the one way you can do that is being as efficient as we are in beef production. And so again, I always show this to the slides, and the kids, they focus in on the nice farms and stuff like that. And then I'll point out the growing urban encroachment in on those farms. And now if they could go back and take this picture now, I would say the farms are all the way up to where that river is now. Okay. The other thing is keeping up with the press. Now, recognize that this is dated September 3rd of 2021. I would say these numbers have even changed since 2021. But again, this data is always out there. You can go to the National Farmers Union and you can find their this report. They're always there, and it's basically showing the share of what it is. If you look at bacon, the retail on the bacon right now is around $18, and the farmer gets about $1.09 of that. Okay, all what we're familiar with, but the general public is not. I responded to a comment today on social media to the department related to the farmers are getting rich out there. Why can't y'all lower your prices? The general public believes that these higher food prices and everything is because the farmers are demanding more money. And beef production and dairy production and all the other ones are the only one that I know that we buy retail and we sell wholesale. And so again, this is something that we've got to educate the general public. When I came here in '94, if you went and visited the Capitol there in Nashville, a large amount of the legislators were an ag background. They were an ag background. They understood agriculture. If you go over there today, what percentage still understand agriculture that's in the legislature of Tennessee House? So again, it's changed. And so what we've got to do, myself as a department head, Courtney as an extension person, other county agents that are on here, farmers that are on here, we've got to be able to communicate and educate based upon this knowledge. And again, this information could be something that we share very frequently. If you say, well, I can't find that information, you get a hold of Courtney, Courtney will get a hold of me, and I'll make sure we get it out. But recognize this is September 3rd. I'd say if I went and looked at and looked for the data today, it's probably already changed. So again, it's something that we have to educate our general public. And then this graph, I just love this graph. Thank you, EPA. EPA, we just love you to death. So EPA did this graph to show where the greenhouse gases come from. Okay, so this is greenhouse gases and what percentage of the greenhouse gases are made up of. So recognize 80% of the greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, 10% is methane, 7% is nitric oxide, and 3% are other gases. Okay. And they showed a truck for transportation. Okay, I'll take that. They show an electric tower for electricity. They show a factory for industry. But what do they show for agriculture? A cow. Whereas cattle only account for 2.9 to 3.9% of the greenhouse gases, depending upon which research you're wanting to look at. But it's in between 2.9 and 3.9 of the agriculture production of greenhouse gases, yet EPA throws a darn cow on there. Sorry, I about said another word. And so again, I want to go to EPA and say, you know, could we change it to like a tractor or something different than a cow? Because the general public sees this, and the general public automatically zooms in that 10% of agriculture is cattle. And we know it's not. So again, this is available. This is an EPA fact sheet, readily available and shared amongst those who want to get rid of the beef industry and things of that sort. And they're saying, look, EPA is showing this. Come on, you know, let's show true facts. So again, I'll get off my pet peeve here and keep going. Okay, so here's question 2, Courtney. True or false? Antibiotics are commonly found in meat at the grocery store.
There you go. You should be able to answer now. Simple, true or false. Dr. Strick, I'll ask you a question real quick, kind of relating back to that farmer share page that you showed. Do you think that limiting our exports or limiting the amount of influence foreign countries have as far as owning or operating agriculture entities in the United States influences that, and that we should limit that?
We have more beef than we can export right now. What's influencing it is the middleman, the packaging, the shipping, the trucking. It's not on the farmer's end. It's You could shut down all the exports and everything, and that retail group is still going to get their bang for their buck. And unfortunately, we're at their mercy unless you're selling direct. I have farmers that will talk to me about retained ownership and everything, and it's similar like going to Las Vegas and playing blackjack or something like that. But it's one way that you can kind of control what you're getting for your product. I had a young man in here today that has a beef farm in Knox County, and he's a student here. And he was complaining about the prices he got at the sale barn. And I said, well, how many order buyers were in there? How many buyers were there? Because he said, I bet there wasn't 3 or 4 in the room. And I said, yep. And just imagine that when your calves came through, one of them got up to go use the restroom. One of them got up to go get a cup of coffee. And yet you were left with one to bid on your cattle. And that happens. It really does happen. And so again, not saying anything negative against the livestock marketing associations. They're not your problem, guys. But the more you can control, the more you have your cattle where they need to be, the more you can control. But right now, it is not the exports. It's the Walmarts and the McDonald's and everyone up above us that are getting the money, and it's not the farmer. So, and you're hearing that from a son of an RCAF producer who totally believes that exports should be shut down and everything else. And I just don't think that way. All right, we got the results in. True, false, woo, 29% says that's true. Okay, let's discuss that. We're going to talk about that here in a bit. I wouldn't want to be on that list for antibiotics. And let me tell you why. Okay. All right. All right. So here are some of the myths, falsehoods, and truths. Grass-fed beef is healthier. I hear that all the time from our students in the class and from the general public and everything. We're going to talk about that because we should be selling beef, not looking at what your market is. And what I'm saying, if you're a grass-fed producer, congratulations. If you're a grass-finished producer, congratulations. You're doing right. You're doing well. Just don't turn around and bash the guys that are doing it conventional because they're doing well. And vice versa. If you're a conventional producer, don't go and badmouth the grass-fed guys. We should be promoting beef is what we should be doing. But with any of these, you can find different stories along the way. And I'm going to show some of these. Antibiotics are commonplace in meat. Lab-based meats, this is a Bill Gates quote. Lab-based meats will save the planet from climate change and are cleaner. We're going to talk about that. And then implanted beef, this is meat, this is from growth implants, will result in females reaching puberty earlier. An actual study that I assisted with back when I was in grad school at Clemson. Okay, so grass-fed beef is healthier. So recognize that there's a website called eatwild.com. Okay, eatwild.com. It's a great website. If you're a hunter, they've got great recipes on there, and being a hunter and everything, it's a great place for me to go find different recipes and stuff like that. But Dr. Rule, who's the lead author on this paper, when he set this up, he's a meat scientist, very, very, very good meat scientist. He's a good guy. And but when he set this study up, it was to do a comparison of fatty acid profiles, omega fatty acids primarily, and cholesterol in bison, beef cattle, elk, and chicken. It wasn't a comparison of this and that. He was trying to get some information for other scientists to work with. The problem is eatwild.com took this as this is the Bible. and when they use it as a Bible, then others that are doing this said, hey, it's better for you. So again, recognize in Rule's paper, his comparison was range beef cows. Now recognize he's out in Wyoming, Montana, okay? Range beef cows that were 4 to 7 years of age, comparing them back to a feedlot steer that was 18 months of age. Now, I don't know many grass finished people around here that's marketing 4 to 7 year old range cows. That's not their market, not their go. And I've got some right there in Seymour, Tennessee, where I'm at, and I know that's not what he's focusing on. Okay, but that was the comparison that Rule did for a scientific paper. You know, it never meant to get, you know, out to the general public that one was better than the other. Okay, but it went there. Okay, so another study come out. Dr. Stephen Smith, he's at Texas A&M, very, very well known. He and Rule would be equals of each other in meat science. And so Dr. Smith did a study and said, hey, you know, we're going to look at this, and it should say grass finished and grain finished, but we're going to look at this, and we're going to look at it in similar age cattle. So he went and got some grain finished calves that were similar age to grass fed, grass finished calves and everything. And he did the hamburger meat. He didn't do rib eyes or rib steaks or anything like that. He said, hey, hamburger's one of the highest commodities out there. I'm just going to look at a hamburger patty. And so what he found was exactly what Rule found. What Rule found was omega fatty acids were higher in the grass finished animals. Okay, that's fine. The amount of omega fatty acids that's in that 8-ounce patty right there, you'd have to eat 5 patties to get your daily allowance. So I'm all for that. The more beef you eat, the happier I'm going to be. But I'm not sure there's too many people out there eating 8-ounce hamburger patties a day. Okay, so again, he is correct. Eatwild.com is correct. There is a higher omega fatty acids in ground beef from grass finished animals. Okay, no doubt about it. Okay, so again, that's one of the things we want to talk about. But the comment that we always hear is it's healthier. Well, the other thing you need to notice is we've all heard about how bad trans fats were. New York City was going to ban trans fats, you know, it's bad for your health and everything. Well, in this study, you had the better omega fatty acids, but you also had higher trans fats. So again, you have a trade-off. The point being, guys, eat beef, sell beef, quit beating up on each other, quit saying mine's healthier than yours, sell beef. That's all I'm saying. I've had both. I'll eat both. I'm not going to get out there and bash folks. Now, the other thing to remember, and this is something to keep in mind, is that in January of 2016, the USDA dropped their definition of grass-fed beef. So if you're going and you're buying grass-fed beef, and we have some grass-fed producers, maybe online here, that are in Tennessee, recognize that for them to label it, they go and they bring in a third party certifying party that reviews it and certifies it. So again, you can get that label put on as long as you've got a third party certification. And I know I've made some people mad at farmers markets when I've went up there to a farmers market at the First Baptist Church, and they said grass-fed was on the label, and I asked them for their third-party certification to show me that, and they about killed me. And the only point I was trying to make is this claim has been invalid since 2016. When it first came out, it was a good claim. It was meant to help the small farmer, the guy with less than 50 cows. I think the maximum you could have was 49. You know, it was meant for them to be able to direct market their animals in a grass-fed thing. But what happened was that got blew up. People quit paying attention to it. And so USDA just said, we're not going to verify this process anymore. If you want to verify it as grass-fed, go get another group. So again, and it gets done. In this state, we have people that will do that. You heard me ask a question about antibiotics. And this is a great website. It's actually from Minnesota that I use in class when I talk about antibiotics. So recognize that, like it says there, just like people, animals sometimes get an infection that needs to be treated with antibiotics. It happens. We know it. Okay, it happens. And so again, I always give people a hard time. They know I don't eat Subway, and the reason I don't eat Subway is because they use only antibiotic meat that's not been treated with antibiotics. And my point to them is then you're supporting animal cruelty, because if an animal gets sick, you're not treating them. And so, oh, no. So recognize that farmers are really good. We can sort animals. I've got a dairy that I work with that has animals that are antibiotic free. And if they get sick, they have another dairy that they can move them to where they'll be then conventional. So again, it does happen in this, it does happen. So again, recognize that. Our veterinarians are very good at prescribing antibiotics and things of that sort, as long as they have a relationship with you. Recognize that FSIS does oversee the meat inspection, the food safety inspection services, and they do normally test meat at these facilities for human consumption. So again, these are typically USDA facilities, which we have several in Tennessee, and they're always reviewing them. And these tests are so sensitive. I'll give you an example of how sensitive these tests are. So years ago, when Dr. Dennis Onks was still the manager at Spring Hill, at the dairy there at Spring Hill. So that tells you how many years ago I'm talking about. We had a cow that was on a mastitis trial. Dr. Oliver was doing a mastitis study over there. He had one cow that came through that they had infected one quarter of this cow. And so recognize they're milking about 120 to 140 a day, twice a day. These cows average production of 70, 80, 100 pounds of milk a day and everything. So a lot of milk getting mixed up. One cow, one quarter, the milkers missed that she had a ban on her. Okay, missed that they had a ban on her, that she should have been discarded. Milk should have been discarded, put in the dump. No way should it have got mixed in that big bulk tank that was sitting inside the dairy, but it did. The truck drives up. The truck driver drives up there with his truck, those big old tankers you've seen going up and down the road to load that milk up. Take it to Mayfield's, okay? Pulls up. He goes in there, and before he loads that tank into that big tank of his, he'll take an A sample and a B sample, just like they do for the Olympics. Just like they do for someone getting tested at the Olympics. Takes an A sample and B samples, labels where it's from, puts it in the truck. Okay? Because he's going to pick up milk from multiple places. He's going to load that milk from the bulk tank into that big truck, and then he's going to go to other farms. He gets to Mayfield's, Dean Foods, whatever you want to call it. Guy opens the top, takes a sample out of the truck, tests it, hot. Got antibiotics in it. What? Antibiotics. So then they go get the A sample and the B samples from the truck drivers, and they start testing every farm. Boom. There was Tennessee, positive. So guess who got to buy that tanker load of milk? Tennessee. Pop that thing. One cow, one quarter. That's how sensitive these tests are. So they're very, very sensitive. But recognize if antibiotics are found, that carcass is condemned. Okay, they're done. It's done. So again, in 2018, less than 0.5% of all milk samples that were tested. I recognize these were the ones that were tested. I'm not saying they test every cow or steer or heifer it runs through. But the ones they tested, they had 0.5%. And the goal is to get to zero. We want zero. So again, as y'all all know from Dr. Strickland and others, when animals are treated with antibiotics, we follow federal guidelines that define how long we must withhold that animal's meat or milk from consumption. We all know that, okay? And if not, we'll ask the veterinarian, they'll tell. Okay, so again, we follow the rules, okay? So again, all meat sold in the United States that arrives at the store after inspection and hostess are termed antibiotic free. Okay, it's against the law for anyone to sell any meat containing unsafe levels of antibiotics. And again, here's some references. They're on these pages if you want to go look up these references for their 2018 report. Here's the key one. If a farmer has more than one antibiotic residue violation in a 12-month period, farmer's name is published on a public violator list, which is available on the federal FSIS website. Let me tell you, feedlots know who's on that list. Feedlots know who's on that list, right? They're going to know, and they're gonna start tracking and following and trying to figure out who this is, and so they're going to try to find out where that animal came in the pipeline. Now, very, very seldom is this the calves that you're seeing in the feedlots and everything. This is usually a cow that's processed at a local custom harvest facility that is inspected here in Tennessee. Years ago, and I haven't asked our state veterinarian lately, but years and years ago, when I asked the state veterinarian what was the most common one they found, it was Banamine, liquid aspirin as I call it. And it does have a withdrawal. And so again, just recognize that our students went up and found this violator list, and I don't believe anyone from Tennessee is on it. So we're doing good, okay? My pet peeve of the year is lab-based meats. Recognize that Bill Gates said we should all be eating lab-based meats and sending our other meat to third world countries and things because of climate change. So lab-based meats have several terms to it. And right now, well, just finished actually. What's the day? 15th. Yep, just finished. So they did have open for public comment, FDA and the USDA, for what this was to be called. And I actually went to the website and put my name in there. Because they want to call it meat. They do not want it being called cultured meat, lab-based meat, cellular meat. They don't want that. They want to be able to call it clean meat. And I have a problem with that. And so again, recognize that they basically take muscle tissue from an animal cell. They're using a lot of umbilical cord tissue right now and stuff like that, and they're growing it in vitro. So you want to see a factory farm, this is a true factory farm, because they're going to have a warehouse with a bunch of big old vats in there that are culturing this meat to get this lab-based meat. So here's a diagram of it. It can be muscle cells. It can be embryonic stem cells that you make them think that they're muscle, things like that. And basically, you get these cells, you grow them up, like I said, in this vat here. And these cells are grown in a dish, and then they're split. And then they're grown in a dish, and they're split. And they're grown in a dish, and they're split. And it's over and over and over and over. And but to prevent contamination in this, you have to have antibiotics in the culture media. I can culture, and I've been doing it for years, I can culture embryos or cells 4 or 5 days maybe without antibiotics. But anything much further than this, I've got to put antibiotics in my culture media to prevent outside contamination or I lose my product. Okay. So my question to these folks for several years has been, how are you going to get the antibiotics out of the meat? And what I was told was, well, we're going to wash it. We're going to wash it. And when we wash it, that'll wash away the antibiotics. Well, I bet a bunch of farmers and everything would like to go out there and just wash theirs off and, hey, I'm antibiotic free. That's not going to work. It's in the meat. But basically, they'll take these proliferated cells, they'll make muscle fibers and everything, and then they'll produce those into a patty. They are already making 3D steaks. So there's a place in Japan where you can get a 3D made steak of these things. There's others that I've seen reported that are trying to get structure or rigor to the cells because it's truly ground beef. I mean, this is mush, okay? And they're trying to get some rigor to it and things like that. So they're putting them like on electrical grids that kind of shock them and make them tighten up and everything. I don't know what's going to work, but they've been working on this for 25 years. Tyson and Cargill are both big donors for this research. They raised a ton of money. The Good Food Institute raised millions and millions of dollars for this research associated with Memphis Meats and others. And so again, it's out there, it's coming. For our kids and everything, they will probably have this available to them. The cost is getting down. When it first started, a 4-ounce hamburger would cost you a couple $1,000. Now I saw the other day in Israel, you could buy one of these hamburgers. They're saying that you can buy one of these hamburgers in Israel once they get approved for $125. So, and that price will just continue to fall. It'd be like computers. You know, when computers first came out, they were very, very expensive, and now they're not as much. But again, this is coming. They've already got chicken nuggets. Okay, they've already got chicken nuggets and other things through this process. They're further along on the poultry side, on the chicken side, than they are the cattle side. But by 2030, it's going to be out there. Okay, now the problem that I have is they say it's going to save the planet, but they're making this in a factory, which is going to involve electricity, people driving to work, so transportation, concrete, things of that sort. I'll dare you to go out into your nice grass field where your cows are grazing and take the surface temperature and then go over there to the concrete pad outside your barn and see which one's hotter. Okay, so you want to talk about climate change and all that, let's talk concrete. But to digress, Dr. Marco Springman, here in the middle, he's a senior environmental researcher at the University of Oxford and hates livestock. But when he studied this, when he studied the culture meat industry, this is from a paper, I've got it right down here at the bottom, cited. He said, so much money is poured into the meat labs, but even with that amount of money that they've poured into this research, the product still has a carbon footprint that is roughly 5 times higher the carbon footprint of poultry. So I would say cattle is not too far behind, if not ahead of that. And it's 10 times higher than the plant-based processed meat, which is not what he wanted to say. He wanted to come out and say, oh, this is going to be perfect. But right now, because of what's involved, then this is not going to occur. Okay. So some other questions they've been asked: is this leading to food classification? Like if you're rich, you can afford this food, and if you're poor, you can only afford this food. And if the rich can afford this food, is it because it's better for you? So is it going to lead to some some issues there. Is it environmentally friendly? Right now, no. Antibiotics, what are they going to do? What are they going to do with those antibiotics? I want to know. And one of the antibiotics they're using is gentamicin, which has a long withdrawal. And so I'm wanting to know how they're going to do that. Someone answer me that question. And then clean meat. The interesting thing with clean meat is this meat, once it's packaged, or once it's made and everything, it's going to be packaged just like in any other Goodlettsville plant or anything else. It's going to be packaged. Okay. And you and I all know that a lot of the issue with the E. coli and things of that sort comes during the packaging process and everything. So, so again, that's something to keep in mind with this clean meat. Are they going to package it differently? Are they going to radiate every package that comes out? What are they going to do? So a few more, I'm going to be done here. Implanted meats, again, oftentimes we talk about females reaching puberty earlier. Recognize that if you look at on a basis, you look at this beef, a non-implanted steer has 2 nanograms of beef, an implanted steer has 3 nanograms of beef, and this is in an 8-ounce serving of common food. So again, but if you look over here at tofu, 51 million nanograms, soy flour, 342 million. Okay, we're talking nanograms here, guys. We're talking the head of a needle. So again, when people tell me, oh, I'm not going to eat that implanted meat, it's got all those extra hormones. Well, then why are you eating tofu? Why are you eating soy burgers? So you're being kind of different there. So again, there's something I want to bring up about implanted. Plant-based meats are the same, better for you and best for the environment or planet. So there was a recent paper that just came out in July of this year from all places, Duke University. Who would have thought Duke University was doing meat or work on meat products? And again, they looked at plant-based versus real beef and had 13 items that they looked at. And again, what they're showing is that they are different, and recognize that meat substitute manufacturers, the plant-based meats, have gone to great lengths to make the plant-based product as meaty as possible, including different iron-carrying molecules from soy, red beets. Red beets are a big part of the red coloring. Berries, carrots, and things like that. And again, to bring up the protein levels, they've used soy, they've used peas, things of that sort. They've also had to do insert vitamin B12 and zinc. They've got to thicken it by using methylcellulose. If you want to know what we use for lubrication when we're pregnancy checking your cows or AIing your cows, we rub this lubricant on our sleeves. That's made from carboxy methylcellulose. Anything similar there? So again, they are different. And what the Duke University found is that there are different, again, that the beef contained 20 metabolites that the plant substitute did not, and the plant contained 31 metabolites that real beef did not. So again, the biggest distinction being on amino acids, proteins, vitamins, and things of that sort. So they didn't come out one way or the other. They just said, recognize that some of these products are good for you and some of you are bad. And so, but they're not the same. So don't get up there and say, well, my plant-based patties are the same as your real beef. No, they're not. Okay. Recognize that there was a new bill recently submitted in July of this year that where lawmakers want to have introduced a bill in factory farming. So again, They were really going after what they call CAFOs, and this is still in the pipeline, still going to be in the works. The problem is this, it's definition. Okay, it's all about the definition. So if you look at the Webster Dictionary, their definition is a large industrialized farm, especially a farm on which large number of animals are raised indoors in conditions intended to maximize production at a minimal cost. This is an article from a website that, a journal, article, whatever you want to call it, that is more predominantly towards vegan and vegetarian. And their data says here, if you read that bottom paragraph, we estimate that 99% of US farm animals are living in factory farms. 99%, including your cattle. So you believe your farm is a factory farm? So the problem is the definition, and that people see this and they believe it. And what they're really confused on what a true factory farm is. And that USDA says different. USDA says that there's basically 98% almost of farms that are family farms. They're small family farms, mid-sized family farms, large-scale family farms, and then there's 2.1% that are non-family farms. Non-family farms meaning like Cobb Ventures or Tyson's poultry facility up here, Avagen's poultry facility, things of that sort. All right. Because if you take your animals to Hitch's Dairy or Hitch's Feedlots out in the Panhandle, Hitch's is a family farm. That's a family ran operation. Yeah, it's a huge feedlot. Yeah, there's a lot of, it's a corporation area, but it's a family ran operation in USDA site. So here's another thing you got to battle is that you've got one group saying 99% are factory farms in the United States, and you've got another group here that's saying, no, that's not so, okay? And they did say that only 70% of the cows are in factory farms. So that means 30% of our cows are living on regular farms. All right, so again, the point of this is not everything is as it seems. Our goal is to promote beef and sustainable beef, which you've already been doing for years and years, and you continue to educate yourself. But we also need you to be our advocates. And so when you're at a grocery store and you hear someone say, oh, don't eat that meat, that's nasty. You know, it's full of antibiotics. You can say, no. I listened to Dr. Schrickstock, and he showed that that meat's tested, animals are tested, and it's not so. And so again, recognize we can't test every animal, but again, those are not going in there into the food chain in a grocery store per se. UTbeef.com, if you've not been there, great website to get additional information. And that is the end of my talk. Recognize that I am using a red tractor, because the green tractor probably wouldn't get the job done. Sorry, John Deere guys.
Awesome. Well, we don't really have any lingering questions.
Okay.
Now, and since we're a little over on time, I'll just go ahead and end it, but really awesome presentation. So thanks for being willing to do this.
And if you've got any questions, shoot them to Courtney. My email, you can look up UTK Animal Science or UT Animal Science. You'll find my picture there. Send me an email. You can agree, disagree, meet me up on the street corner, want to fight, whatever. Support beef, guys. We're here for beef. Beef, beef, beef. Thank you, Courtney.
Yep, no problem. And whenever I end this, you'll have a survey to take. If you don't get it, you'll get it tomorrow. All right. Good night.